episode of Plug and Pay. Welcome to today's show. Plug and Pay is a talk show where we have the opportunity to talk to interesting, inspiring payroll professionals from all around the world about topics that are shaping the global payroll industry. My name is Mark Oliver Fiedler. I'm founder of Payzar and also the CEO. And I'm excited to be here together with my friend and co-host, Max van der Klies-Bussink. So Max, great to be with you again. How are you doing?
Excellent. I've woken up and I realized it's another day in global payroll. So what could you wish for, right? Another day in global payroll, helping everyone in the world get paid. And then under your inspiring leadership, Mark. Okay, but it's not about us today, because we actually have a very, very exciting guest that you will reveal, Mark.
Exactly. Yes, we're very pleased. We're very happy that we have Debbie Piacitelli. This is how I've been told I pronounce it. My Italian in me coming out. So we have Debbie with us today. Debbie is a global payroll leader at Zimmer Biomet. And Debbie, it's great to have you on the show. Thank you for joining us. As we always like to do when we meet a guest, we always like to learn a bit more about your background. So let's start there and get to know you a little bit.
Sure. It's such a pleasure to be here with you guys finally. Yay, Max. It's been a long journey for us, I think 10 years anyway. But happy to be here and happy to be talking to you about moving around in this industry, moving from different companies. I've been doing this for almost 30 years. I kind of fell into payroll, as everyone knows, and really just developed a passion for this work. I worked on the finance side, on the HR side, and realized that the beauty of payroll is that you really make an impact with people over time. You are you're in a position where you're kind of like a bridge between all of the other areas of the business. So, payroll leaders do well when they, they're process oriented, but they're also people oriented, and they're also, like to run businesses, because when you're running payroll, you see all aspects of the business and you're supporting all aspects of the business. So really, there's no better place, I think, in an organization that's so rich with opportunities, and to look back on your career and say, wow, I really touched a lot of people.
Yes, we do touch a lot of people, but maybe we'll focus on something you've been working on, Debbie. And it might throw you off, but because I know we've worked on some articles in the past together with Judy Hamilton. We need to give a shout out to Judy as well.
Judy, woohoo!
Judy, she'll get a tag. And Debbie, we've known each other for a number of years. And this is the first time, surprisingly, we are on a show together. We have a lot to talk about, but I think what we want to focus on today is something that happened to you because you switched jobs a couple of months ago. And this may have been your, third, fourth role as a global payroll leader. I've switched jobs too often, if you ask my mother, but I always tell her it's for the better. And it's a new dynamic. You leave a certain team and dynamic, right? And you move into a new type of dynamic, which you've now recently gone through. So what are your experiences to all the leaders out there who might face change or might change a role? And, what are your takeaways, Debbie?
Yeah. I think overall, it's around the fact that your life is living and breathing. It's constantly changing, and so aren't organizations. There's constant change wherever you go, and there will be different needs in different phases of your life, right? So there's a process of what to do when you're thinking about changing roles and what to do after you make the leap. First, make sure you really understand your own priorities, your own needs, and that by moving on, you're in full alignment with yourself, right? It's a huge change for you and your family. It's new laptop, new systems, new email, new login, new benefits, new retirement plan, new banks, all that stuff. You have to start it all over again. And when you onboard with a new company, that first 3 months is really like it goes by so fast. I'm already in my 4th month, Max, and I feel like, whoa, where did it go? The reality is for global leaders, when you change, it's more like 1 year, right? That your life is going to be kind of uploaded. So really remember that building the trust that you've spent your last 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 years building has to start over again. And it has to start with the team that you inherit and also the team around you. So really make sure that you understand who you are, why you're moving, and what you want to get out of your next role.
Mm. And Debbie, maybe before you go, Mark, like what I always found super difficult when you were switching job is telling your team that you're going to move on, right? Because they've been working with and for you in the trenches, getting everyone paid, doing all the work. Like, I'm not sure if this will bring you back into a happy place, Debbie, but how did you kind of mentally prepare to giving the news to your team that their leader would be moving on?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is you're right. It's really sad to say goodbye. But I think that the you know the good news is that I have developed them in the time that I was with them, kind of raised them up. They can do this. They can do this on their own. And I am still in touch with so many of those that I have led over the years. And we continue to network. We continue to work together in the global payroll community, right? We continue to check in with each other. These are lifelong relationships that you build. So yes, it's really sad to leave them. And it feels like, oh gosh, how am I going to do this without them? But you do the same thing the next place you go. You build people up, you build a solid team, and just whatever relationships I built before, I'll build again. And we just kind of through through the network of the globe, we keep kind of raising these payrollers up into this global payroll space to be more like leaders. So we're building future leaders.
Yeah, I think that highlights an interesting point, right? You started talking about it's a big change, any career move you make for you, for your family. But I think the topic we're talking about there highlights it's bigger and broader than that, right? It's not just a big change for you personally, but it's a big change for people that have been working with you. And then also, of course, people that you will be working with in the new team that you're moving into, which takes on a whole dimension of its own, which certainly we want to get into a bit more. But maybe before we get into that dimension of how to work with a new team and so on, I suppose in terms of making that transition, there's always the onboarding process, right? And you already mentioned, the first 90 days, there's whole books that talk about, what are the things that you should be thinking about as you make that transition. But I wondered in terms of your own practical experience in a payroll context, what are your thoughts on what's important in terms of the onboarding experience, the onboarding process? Are there certain, sort of go-to things or highlights that you would say this is kind of the things that you really need to pay attention to when you're going through that, first 90 days of onboarding?
Yeah, definitely. I have a punch list of things to make sure that, I understand our policies and our process documents, things like that. But, really mapping out your time over the first 90 days, evaluate the systems, evaluate the processes, learn who is who are your influencers and who are your blockers. Make sure you make good friends with those blockers. Evaluate the staff, look at standardization, right? What's your ratio? Are we 80-20, 40-60, all that? Make sure that you can measure your progress because, the evaluation of programs takes time. And very often you come into a role and a lot of that evaluation has taken place before you and they give you, the company will give you all that's done before you. And you have to kind of take it as a grain of salt because it was a point in time that this evaluation was done and it was by a particular perspective. You don't necessarily know the questions that were asked and how they were phrased and the context in which they were asked. So you really have to leverage your own experience and understanding around the world of payroll and the globe to interpret whatever has been given to you, especially for organizations that have been built on acquisition, right? Because a lot of times it's just layering on layering on layering, and then understanding how to unwind that spaghetti can be a challenge. So again, making sure that you have a a place where you can measure yourself. I always build a global payroll matrix. This is the snapshot of all of my countries, soup to nuts, everything in a big matrix, so that I know this is where I started, and I know where my gaps are, and I know where I need to go. And I kind of also do that with my team. Like, this is where you are today. Let's measure in 3 months where how you feel about, your progress. Because you don't do this alone. When you enter a new company, you really have to build strong partnerships, and you have to really, lots of networking, right? I think that's the most important, is just to, have a roadmap. I think I was talking to someone recently, and I'll just do a shout out to Nathan North, because it was him that I was talking about this too. But we always start with this blueprint and this the state of payroll, right? And I remember that, at one company, after 1 year, I did, okay, this is where we started, and after 1 year, this is where we are. And people's eyes were opened, and they were like, wow. And it really, after 1 year, it really engaged everyone on the team to, wow, what a difference we've made, right? To look backwards in order to look forwards.
Yeah. If you're comfortable, I think this sounds great. And, I love the idea of kind of creating, as you come into a new role, drawing up a baseline of, this is my starting point from all sorts of dimensions, process and KPIs and structure and people. It sounds like you've thought about this quite a bit, and you said you have this kind of punch. What did you call punch point?
I called it a punch list from
list.
working. I was working for a general contractor in the very beginning part of my career, and we used punch lists, and there were these little, anyway.
Yeah.
Very aggressive, a punch list, but maybe that's my lack of.
You can punch a hole and say I've done it, right? Is that where it comes from? I would imagine.
Yeah, it's it's like general supervisors or project managers. They come to a project, and they look at what are the things that have to be done today. Boom.
Yeah.
Check them off.
So I was going to say, if you're comfortable sharing that with the broader community here, that might be something fun and nice to link up as we're publishing this episode.
The title of your episode, Plug and Pay, is very much like what I build with the Global Payroll Matrix, because you have to be able at any point in time to unplug and plug in, right? And so in order to unplug and plug in, because perhaps a payroll vendor goes out of business, right? Or it's just sunsetting a product, you need to be able to unplug that vendor and plug in a new vendor. And that's really what the Global Payroll Matrix does for you, is to really understand the complexities of your global footprint. And, you can watch the transition of entities, as you add new entities.
Yeah.
And so you really need to have that understanding, and it's not going to stay up in your head, right? And, payrollers, what we do is, as soon as we've processed a payroll, that payroll is purged, and we're opening up our space, our main mind space for the next payroll. So you have to have some kind of roadmap.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll see if I can pull something together that's anonymous.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
Hey, this got me reflecting, Debbie, on my onboarding in those type of roles. What I used to bring with me, and I think I posted that even before we started working together, Mark, is kind of this payroll process, a 15-step payroll process of pre-payroll, run payroll, post-payroll. That's the same everywhere.
Yep.
Right? The most complex thing is to make something super simple.
Yes.
I always just went with this one slide, and I went to the teams, either virtually or in person, say, hey, does this is this a bit the flow that you're doing in global payroll? You get your data, you process it, submit it to a provider, get it back. Say, yeah, this is how it works. I said, okay, what systems do you then use in each step? They go, oh, we use this. I said, and if you could change one system, which one would it be? It would be the HRIS, right? That's always the thing. And then out of all your providers, who would you want to stay with? Some said none. Some said these, right? And okay, and if you get your GL files over to finance, how long does it take you? Way too long. Excel. It kind of uncovers all of these as is challenges to then indeed map out kind of the to be. Hey, and Debbie, I know you've also recently released an episode and an article with Nick Day from JGA Recruitment. We're giving a lot of shout outs here.
The shout out episode today. There's going to be so many linkages on this one.
Yeah.
But that's great. Like all of us together are advancing the industry, so everybody plays their role. And I know it was about attracting and retaining talent, right, within global payroll. And I know you have a very talented individual in your team now currently, right, who is also very active on social media, Moksha Haack.
Moksha Haack.
Exactly. So he's kind of this new person on board and trying to raise his profile. He does an excellent job. So as a leader, you have already identified him, right? So you come into a new role. There's this super excited guy. How are you going to kind of nurture that talent and give him kind of the podium to further develop himself as a leader?
Oh gosh, wow. I mean, you just asked a lot right there. Before I answer the question about developing future leaders, let me just back up to your chart, your pre-payroll, your payroll, your post-payroll chart, right? So I too, Max, have my own chart that I always bring into my teams, and I call it the payroll cycle first time right. Right? And it's all about getting your data into your cycle in that data collection mode first time. So mine is a circle, and it's very simple. Here's all your partners in the payroll cycle because you own none of the data.
Correct.
Right? You are responsible for processing properly authorized data. So I introduce myself and my vision to all payroll teams pretty much the same way, using the same cycle. And in that process, you start to identify people in your team that get it right away. Moksha is one of those people that gets it right away. He's very process oriented. He's all about process excellence. He's all about, connecting the dots. And if you think about one of my strengths, and if you go back to my strengths finders profile, is all about connectedness. I'm an integrator. I'm a bridge builder and a unifier. I think holistically. I'm a big picture person who embraces what my past mistakes and how we can build a strong future together. And so the first thing I do is I show the payroll cycle and I learn who's really getting it and who's jumping on board, and then leverage their strengths. Now, Moksha is a superstar, but let me tell you, all of my payroll leaders are superstars in their own right. All of them. We've got, Susan Worth, Susan Watson, who's been here for years and years and years, who's really solid. So I don't want to, highlight one person to not highlight the others, because we are all equally bringing our strengths to the table. And, I'm one of those people that, I have some weaknesses, but you know what? I don't need to spend a ton of my time building, strengthening my weaknesses, because I will never be a guitar player. I'm a flutist. I'm a singer. I am not a guitar player. So I'm not going to spend any time playing the guitar. And that's what I love about starting a new team and building a new team and learning and meeting people like Moksha, who just blow me away with his energy and his ideas and his passion. He's the one who has also adopted the tagline "Passion for Payroll."
There you go.
And in terms of building, then your relationship with the team and managing your own dynamic with the talent that you've found and taking that team forward. I'm curious, what kind of role do you see culture play in all of this? Because you come from a culture, your own culture, the previous company's culture, the team that you're moving into has had a culture with its previous leader, and the company itself, of course, has its own culture. I'm curious, in your experience, having moved from different companies and different industries into new roles, how does culture play into this kind of transition? How do you, leverage it or embrace it? What culture brings to that transition process?
Yeah, that's a real hard one, because a lot of organizations believe their culture is something that maybe it's not once you get inside. I think that like people, organizations are living and breathing, and they change. And they change with the leaders that they bring in and the people that they bring in. Um, Personally, in my work life, I like to feel a synergy between my work life and my private life. I really believe that we need to be in that constant state of alignment with our core values and make sure that our company's core values are following along in that path. When you work for a really large multinational with a very solid, culture that's steep, it's really hard to change that culture.
Mm.
And so I think that when you think about, where I am today, am I feeling this synergy in the culture? And is it aligned with my values? And if it is, then I'm going to dig my heels in and I'm going to keep working hard. If it starts to veer away from the culture that I joined up with, or that it's just plain changing, right?
Yeah.
Then just recognize that, okay, this isn't for me anymore, and it's time to it's the wrong fit, I guess. Um, for me, it's also about, again, I keep talking about aligning with your core values. There are trigger points for every person. Some are going to be positive and some are going to be negative. And when the culture around you starts pushing your trigger points that indicate to you, there's something here that I'm not really comfortable with, um, and I'm spending more time, kind of pushing water up a hill, then I
Yeah.
realize that, okay, then the values and the culture of the organization itself is changing, and maybe I'm seeing it before another is seeing it.
Yeah, I think right. Culture is measured not by PowerPoint, but by actions, right?
Hmm. Yeah,
That we've
exactly.
been in situations where the PowerPoint was awesome, the speech was awesome, the presentation was awesome. And then a few months later, you're starting to notice a few actions, and you remember this star speech of the CEO and the CHRO about all the values. And then you're like, you do realize I work in payroll, right?
Right. You know, you
Like,
know what I
just
love?
saying.
I am going to shout out a little bit to ZB here, because my very first town hall that I was present on, and maybe I'm still, because I'm still a newbie, but our president basically had uh, a a tagline with his personal cell phone, and he said, "These are my values. This is what I'm here for. This is what our mission is." He went through our vision, our mission, our strategic pillars, but he had his personal cell phone. And
Oh,
if I
wow.
am not living this and breathing this, you can call me. And talk about transparency. That spoke to me, because it said that I have the ability to pick up the phone and say, "Hey, I'm feeling some dissonance here, right? This is what you say we're going to do. This is what I'm seeing we're doing. I'm feeling a rub here." And there's that permission to do so. Will I do it? Hopefully, I won't experience that dissonance. And if I experience the dissonance, it will be in a good way.
Well, hopefully you'll never utilize that number in the future, Debbie. But I think, Mark is the CEO, right? But it also is at a global payroll
And you
manager.
have my cell phone number too, Max. So I think
Oh, there
we're
you
on
go.
the same
I
path.
just used it to exchange nice messages, and not that the walk and the talk were different. So, and I'm a year in, so I would have noticed by now. Anyways, kudos to you, Mark. Walk in the talk, not walk in the line. What was I going to say? Yeah. So it also goes for global payroll leaders, right? We say we need to be standardized, we need to be flexible at the same time, we need to do this and that. What I used to do, and I'd be curious what your course of action is, Debbie, is actually process payrolls. So when I was a global payroll manager, I always did 1 or 2 payrolls, like from start to finish, as if I was a payroll specialist, because it's a guilty pleasure still doing the numbers.
Right.
But
Right.
actually, yeah, but like I also transitioned to slide packs and strategy and all of that. But I need to still feel, and I have touched, how does it actually work in this company, right? Who do I connect with for inputs? Who do I send GL files to? How does this provider respond to me? How do employees, what is their kind of their culture? How do they engage with payroll teams? What's their language? Like, is it formal? Is it informal? Are they always complaining, or are they understanding? And that's how I used to drive change within teams and kind of get accepted as a new leader. Like, oh, okay, he actually does a payroll reconciliation, or that type of thing. And that helped me as kind of a leader understand, okay, this is where the friction sits. And then I had my team review me. And they were like, Like, do I review like the global payroll manager says, yeah. And Mark knows this. I'm not as accurate as a payroll professional sometimes because I get distracted very easily. So I said, yeah, you guys review. If you find something, tell me. Right. And then we'll make up for it. The same thing as I will review you. So that's how I used to kind of get buy-in of the teams. But do you do something similar, Debbie?
Oh my
Just
gosh. Yeah.
to,
You know, and I think that might be the differentiator, Max, is that's something that I do as well.
oh,
And I, you know, my goal is that we build payroll run books that are, you know, for every single country. And if it doesn't exist today, with Moksha and I, it will exist tomorrow. So, but it's I want to be able to go in and shadow what you're doing, and I want to be able to do it myself because I'm the person off the street that has to run this payroll if something happens to you. So
yeah.
that's my craziness. And you know, trust me, when I talked about this with the team about shadowing, right? And I asked the payroll managers to start shadowing their countries as they're taking on a new country. I want you to shadow what they're doing today before you start changing anything. Before you start on looking at where we can improve, you have to understand exactly what the status looks like today, and then you do it, right? You have to feel the pain of what your employees are experiencing. You have to, that there's no other way to get to the employee experience. And payroll, the payroll user experience is just as important as the person
Mhm.
walking into a
Yeah.
manufacturing plant. And so, yes, I can meet influential, I can do my job better if I know what they're faced with.
And I know in previous rules, you also had the challenge to be standardized and scalable and all of that within payroll. But I know you've mentioned manufacturing sites and that type of environment, which is hyper local. So, you know, you've been around for a long time, so you're very experienced. What's your take on I need to be standardized, but I also need to be flexible? How do you kind of break that compromise, Debbie?
Yeah, exactly. And so the way I explain it is I need a compelling business reason to be non-standard, right? So naturally, there's going to be localizations that have to occur. For example, in Belgium, Netherlands, the local documents are in local language. Well, I'm not going to necessarily know the local languages around the
No,
world.
you don't speak
No,
Dutch, Debbie?
I, I've tried. I'm trying. You know, I'm still having a hard time pronouncing your last name. So, so what I'm trying to say is that um, local where you have to, where there's a compelling business reason to do that, and that compelling business reason is statutory, or it just can't be done another way, because you know, anyway. So that's really that's how I look at it, and I am looking for input. I am curious, I'm inquisitive, I'm going to ask. I'm also an investigator. I'm going to ask those questions. I'm going to ask the 5 whys, the who, what,
Ah,
where, when, and how. I'm going to do all of that stuff. And maybe it's not, I might do it like as methodical as maybe a project manager might do it, but I will get to those 5 whys eventually. And some people will think I'm a pain in the neck for doing it because I'll keep coming back. But one more thing. Really, my mom used to say, you should have been a lawyer. You really should have been a lawyer. You
is that
just,
a compliment
It sounds like the Inspector Colombo. I don't know if you remember that
oh, yes,
TV
yes.
series from
Oh,
the
it's terrible.
80s where he would
I
always
know.
come back and as he had already walked out the
One
door,
more thing. Yeah.
that was
That,
usually the real question that was, really going to reveal who did it.
but do you see how that building that he built the relationship first and he
Yeah,
got them to talk to them
to
and
trust them. Yeah.
to trust them. And then he came back and he had that one question. I'm not nearly as an expert as that. I'm probably more clunky, but that's my method is I really want to learn through people, again, going back to those themes that I have, that connectedness, the input.
And the clunky sometimes works because that was Colombo too, right? He always was a little sort of clumsy and would, I don't know, forget something, and his coat was all crinkled and everything. So no one thought that he would ever figure anything out, but that was his ammo. Great.
Definitely.
Well, I like how we connected payroll and detective work with kind of 1980s television and crime stories. A nice way to bring it all together.
The one thing about payroll that everyone, whether you're in the HR side of the house or the finance side of the house, everyone will want in your organization is audit readiness, right? And how do you become audit ready? You have to know how to audit, right? So an inspector, a detective is really the same as an auditor.
Yeah.
I once got a question because I also shared with teams, right? Audit readiness, you know, great term. It looks great on the slide as well. Everybody agrees, right? Nobody can disagree. No, let's not be audit ready. Let's all sign off.
Not so important.
Yeah. Who cares? We're a listed company, right? So everybody will, of course, say we need to be audit ready. But then someone asked me the right questions. What does audit readiness mean? So I came up with an own definition that you can either agree or disagree with. But the last completed payroll cycle should be ready for internal and external audits. Mm-hmm. That's how audit ready you should be. You should be able to literally drop the pen and say, I'm going to stop now. I don't need to move files around. I don't need to send new emails or gather audit evidence of reviews of various controls, of inputs, of reconciliations. It's all there. That's my definition of audit ready. And
absolutely.
It's aligned. Okay.
Absolutely. I mean, every payroll run book for every cycle, whether it's an off cycle, whether it's a stock run, or whether it's a full payroll cycle, has to have a run book. And that run book, you should be able to hand over to your auditor, and they should be able to look at any element in that run book and find the source. Go back to the source. Or here's a paycheck from that pay run, and I can trail it back to the beginning. It's not easy to get there, as you know. So the first, again, in that first 30 days, bring everybody to the same page. We want to get to a place together that uses fit for use technology, which we have talked about many times, the three of us.
You mean pace out, maybe? Like, yes. To be audit ready, okay.
Right.
Another shout out.
Yeah. Build mature end-to-end processes, right, Max? Because it's all about first time right. So even though payroll only sits over here, we want to understand how the data gets into the system of record and what the pension payments need to look like, right? That are standardized, sustainable, but also agile. How do you do that? Well, that's where the expertise, I think, comes in. Understanding when you can break the standardization that enables payroll to deliver accurate on-time results that are basically following that mission of first time right. We want every employee to get an accurate paycheck on their first day. And everything that we do as a team has to be moving in that direction. Every person that's touching that payroll for an entity or a country needs to be thinking about that at the beginning of the cycle. And I really don't want them to be distracted with going to find information that they need, right? I want information to flow to them so that they can focus on that data that they're starting with, instead of, oh gosh, I didn't get this, go find the commission file. Oh, I didn't get this, go find the bonus file. Oh, and I also didn't get this. Where's my personal car use this month, right? We don't want our payroll teams to have to go find the information. We want it to come to us so that we can actually look at that. These are all of my inputs. Yeah. This is my system of record foundation. I have 62 people in this country. These are their base salaries. These are all my inputs. I'm going to run my pay cycle. I'm going to now do that variance analysis. Make sure I got all my inputs. I got all my output matches everything that was sent to me.
Exactly, and that audit readiness should be top of mind. I remember the first pay cycle I did at a certain conferencing tool was like I asked the payroll manager at the time, payroll coordinator, I don't know what the exact title was. Hey, how do you know all the equity is processed? She's like, what do you mean? I said, well, how do you know? I see, ESPP, I see RSUs, NQZ. How do you know it's all processed? Yeah, I ran a quick comparison of what we submitted and what we validated. I said, and then if in 6 months' time, right? I said, just assume the auditors come in and they would ask me the question, hey, Max, why did you approve that payroll and how do you know the equity was correct? I said, I can't say that my specialist at the time ran a quick and dirty Excel validation that's not evidenced or audited. I said, that's not how it works. She said, oh, yeah. So, yeah, I'm asking you because I will get the same question at some point in time. And we need to be here for each other. And that's why, yes, it takes a little bit more effort and a little bit more time to document and evidence everything. But rest assured, it will save us a lot of hassle when the auditors come in. And it's not a question if, it's a question when they will come in. By the way, any auditors listening, we love you, but stay away.
Well, speaking of that, on my steerco here, I realized after the first or second month that we are missing a critical ingredient into our steering committee. And so I went to our audit leader and I said, I need a person to sit on steerco. And so then I reached out to the person and told them they were voluntold to join
Yes.
steerco. But again, auditors love, right? They love to be a partner. They love to be partners with you because they want the same thing that we want. We want an audit ready product. We want to be able to go back and make sure that every input has a checkbox, that it's been validated, it's from an authorized source, and that it was properly properly processed. Speaking of equity, right? We've had over the years, I think I delivered a couple of presentations for Payroll Oregon benefits in kind and equity processes where you really have to always go back to your plan document. What does your policy say and what does your plan document say? So many payrollers are just processing what they're given, and you can process what you're given and hope it's authorized, but you still have to get back to that first time right concept. Am I actually processing an ESPP or am I actually processing something else? Is it mislabeled? How often have you seen that, Max, in your career where an item comes into payroll and it's labeled improperly? It's called a pension and it's actually, something else, as an example. That's where the actual expertise of payroll comes in, is understanding when something is called a benefit in kind, but it's actually a cash payment, right? Or something called a cash payment that's actually something else. It's going to be treated differently in payroll.
Absolutely. So I think we could probably go on for a couple more hours talking about all the important dimensions of reassuring yourself that as you're moving into a new organization, into a new role, you really understand what's happening, and you start building your credibility. You find your way around. I'm mindful of your time, everyone else's time who's listening to the podcast. So do want to bring it to a wrap here. But before we do, just general question: any other suggestions, references that you would point people to in terms of thinking more, learning more about this topic of changing roles and things where they can go in order to educate themselves and learn from?
Yeah, I mean, I guess all I would say is that look at people who've done it. If you see somebody's posted a new role, check in with them after 30 days or so and say, hey, what made you just network, just do like an informal interview and ask them, and you maybe even do it after 6 months or a year, but really just understand why you want to do this and make sure that you are aligned with your own personal goals and values, and that when you show up to that next organization, that you can show up as your full self with everything that you want to give to the organization, and make sure that you can do that. If you feel like you're not going to be able to do that, then stay.
And maybe given that you have such great experience and advice here, any way for people to get in touch with you through, I don't know, LinkedIn or any other channels, how they can?
Yeah,
can find
definitely
you?
LinkedIn. Definitely, that's probably the best way. There's one thing that I just want to say is back about 20 years ago or maybe more, I was primarily on the finance side of the house in leading payrolls. And I really realized that I needed to see the other side. So I started seeking out organizations where payroll reported into HR and where I could do more than just payroll, right? I could do some C&B, or I could do some retirement plans. I could do other things. And that was the first part of my career was all finance oriented. Second part of my career was really HR oriented. And now I'm back in the finance side of the house. So I'm now able to take all that I've learned from my experiences into this role. And so I think that that experience, I had a personal coach at that time who basically said, hey, I can introduce you to a CHRO, or back then it was just an SVP of HR. And I had an informational interview with them, and they said, well, here's what you're going to do. You're going to find roles that have this, this, and this. And that's what I did for the next couple of years. I worked for organizations where I could learn and grow, but still lead the payroll function, and continue to do implementations, continue to do transformational work, and building shared services, things like that. So looked for, what am I missing, and what do I want to do? How do I want to build my career and move in that direction?
That's great advice, and I think good point to end on. Be sort of thoughtful and strategic and deliberate as you plan your moves, and get into that kind of transition. Fantastic, Debbie. Well, thank you so much for joining Max and myself today. This was wonderful, and so many exciting nuggets that you left us with, and great shout outs as well. So it is a community, and we all learn from each other. Certainly a lot of learning in this one today. So hopefully people enjoyed this episode. If you do, please make sure you follow us on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, on Google Podcast or Apple Podcast. And Spotify, that's true. And I'm probably forgetting a bunch of other places where people can find the podcast. But anyways, people will find it. Search for Plug and Pay, and you will find Max and myself and our wonderful guests. So thank you so much, Debbie. And thank you everyone for tuning in, and talk to you again soon.
Thank you. Appreciate it.